Good morning to you all. This morning is Saturday, February 17th, 2018. We warmly welcome you to our Bible study. We're recording from the Plainfield Christian Science Church, Independent, Plainfield, New Jersey, the United States of America. And this morning our moderator is Tom from New York City.
Hello, this is Tom from New York. I was reading something this morning. It was written by Lyman Powell. He was saying this about Mary Baker Eddy. He said, Mrs. Eddy's reliance on the Bible was absolute. Now, something else I want to read to you is, this is by Clarence Eden. He was a member of the board of lectureship, and he knew he knew Mary Baker Eddy. So he said, all who take up the study of this science at once find themselves earnest students of the Bible. Now I would like to read something to you from Edward Kimball. For those of you who don't know, Bicknell Young wrote something about Edward Kimball and said that he had taken 3 different classes from Mary Baker Eddy. He was very well respected. He said, this is what Edward Kimball said, I have never heard of a denomination who studied the Bible more than Christian scientists do. I do not believe that there are any Christians who read the Bible more reverently, hopefully, or profitably, or who more prayerfully and constantly strive to discover its light and follow its commands.
There you go.
And what happened?
There you go.
I mean, that's what it should be.
And look what happened after she left.
That's what it should be, and that's why we're doing these Bible studies, because it's fallen into where most scientists only read their lesson, and they usually read it in a full text manner, so they don't even hold the Bible in their hand, nor do they read around the stories anymore, either in the Bible or in Science and Health. So, thank you. Those were wonderful.
Yeah, we're going to have fun today, I think, talking about the story of Abigail. So to read what was posted, and this was from Lyman Powell, and those who don't know, he was not a Christian scientist, so I find this kind of interesting. He wrote about some contributions that Christian scientists made. Here's one of them. It says, it, meaning Christian Science, is turning men and women into Bible readers and thus bringing them as no other set of people are to the very source of spiritual life. Nothing can be more important than that. And no later than last Sunday, I paid glad tribute in my pulpit to Christian Science for this service and called my people to a new and more devout reading of the Bible every day. He also wrote, as America in 1917 was on the brink of the Great War, the author wrote for publication. In the last 10 years, Christian Science has certainly encouraged daily Bible reading. Until now, Christian scientists are probably the most assiduous Bible readers in the world.
Wow.
All right. There you go.
That's what it should be. So, read every day, consecutively, Science and Health, prose works, and the Bible. Not just your lesson. Get to know it. In the olden days, people read the Bible all the time.
required reading.
It was required reading. It was required reading to get into Harvard and Yale. And now this is also an attempt to take the Bible out of the hands of the people, Christianity out of the hands of the people. After a week of mocking Christians, we had a terrible shooting in Florida. We have a responsibility because and people say, why in America? Why in America? And it's all this gun stuff. No, it's because our country is based on Christian principles. It is based on that, and the penalties are going to be harder and swifter when we take prayer out of the schools, prayer out of our homes, and the Bible out of the hands of people. Thank you, Tom.
So, anybody else have some thoughts about Bible reading? I'm sure we have a lot of people on the call.
This is Colleen. I learned of Christian Science maybe 6 years ago, and before that, I did not know anything, about the Bible. I didn't read the Bible. I didn't know any of the people in the Bible. Embarrassed to say, but that's the truth. And when I first learned of Christian Science, I started with Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, and I found that very interesting. And I could not really read the Bible at that point because I had such a dim view of it. I thought it was about a lot of wars and a lot of killing, and I thought, I have enough on my plate. I didn't understand it at all. So the reading of Science and Health opened it up to me that, it was it's the spiritual message, and it's been so wonderful. I read it all the time. I learn so much. And these Bible studies, I ask God for a Bible study, and this is way over and beyond what I could have ever wished for, because I do learn so much, and I just wanted to mention that.
Thank you.
Thank you, yes.
I think parental or adult example makes a big difference, because from my own experience, it's what I saw my mother and my father do daily, and they made us do it too when we grew up. Is what has helped me to even know the Bible stories, Sunday school, all those things. So I think it's more example, and that makes a difference.
Most definitely. Thank you.
I myself, coming from a background that did not read the Bible routinely. On the contrary, in the school, I remember that we were giving a diluted version, and it was called Sacred History. It was a book that was put out mostly by the Catholic Church, and it had taken selections from the Bible that I guess was in accordance to what their dogmas and beliefs were. And we were, told to read that, but never to touch the Bible. It was never encouraged. And one time, a few years ago, it was not until I came to this country that I realized that there were Christian sects that did read the Bible daily or routinely. And I remember speaking with my aunt a few years back, and I said, but, you don't read the Bible. She says, oh, yes, I study it. But what I wanted to tell her is, no, you study whatever that church gave you to read, and that was not the Bible. So I am very happy when I encounter Christian Science and was able to see it's okay to read the Bible daily.
Thank you.
Well, in Christian Science...
Oh, go ahead, please.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, in Christian Science, Mrs. Eddy has opened up the spiritual interpretation of these Bible stories and the history. And what happened all through history is when people were faithful to God and treated their brother man well, then they prospered. And we're learning this all through the Bible, not just taking things literally, but seeing the results of people's behavior and love of God.
That's why it's key to the scriptures. Okay.
Thank you. So, our topic, son of Belial, really, I think our topic is Abigail. That's kind of a, let's go on a positive note. This is about Abigail and what a wonderful person she is. First question, where is the wilderness of Paran?
Would this be the northeastern division of the Sinai Peninsula? I believe it's where the back when Moses days when they marched. It's a 3-day march from the Sinai after they went through the Red Sea, I believe.
So I found that it said it's the wilderness where the Israelites wandered for 38 years. And it's 2,000 feet above sea level.
On the map I saw, it did look like a really big area, and on different sites they seem to outline it in a different way, but it did seem to be south of Israel.
And the pictures of it were very desolate.
Yeah.
I think it's where Hagar went too, right, with the baby.
Ishmael.
You know, it's interesting. It really pretty much proves that God took care of them, because if they could spend 38 years in a region that was so hot, so dry, didn't have soil, nothing to grow. I mean, I don't know where they got food, you know. It's kind of hard to understand how they lived for so long, you know.
But it also
Humanly
proves that
speaking.
God can do everything.
Yes, God gave them manna every morning and quails every evening.
And
Water.
it started when they needed, and it ended on the day that they no longer needed it, when they crossed into Egypt, Israel.
Thank you. Divine love always has met and always will meet.
Every human need
Every human need.
today.
Wonderful proof. Thank you, Bruce. And also the hymn, Day by Day the Manna Fell. If you don't know that hymn, memorize it.
Oh, to learn this lesson well.
Hymn number 46.
I'd like to add something that stood out to me. It's more of the period of this part of David's life, and it mentions that Samuel had died. And I read a little bit about that, and I really had a greater sense of the mourning and that David is going through, and really Israel hopefully was. But there's a part where they talked about when Samuel says to Saul, quote, "I will not return with you, for you have rejected the word of the Lord, and the Lord has rejected you from being king over Israel." And that's when he goes to pick David. But what I found interesting is in our lesson this week, there's something from 1 Peter that says that the face of the Lord is against them that do evil. And one of the definitions of face I've found is presence. So really, you've cut yourself off the presence of God. And I really feel Samuel was almost telling that to Saul, that I've tried, I've warned you, I've talked to you, and you've cut yourself off. And he was a very important prophet or teacher, this Samuel. And so here, we're going into a situation where it's really deep changes going on.
Thank you, Linda. Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you. Yes, and then what did Saul do when Samuel was gone? He went to the witches of Endor, right, to try to bring him back because he missed him so much. So I take heed.
And then he committed suicide. there you go.
Paul?
In a way. Yeah.
Well, he was, thought he was killed in battle. So.
Well, his sons were killed in battle, and yeah, that certain sense that's right. The sons were killed in battle. He was afraid that they were going to come and capture him and probably do some things he didn't want done. So he fell on a sword.
Okay, that's right. Yes.
All right.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
So it was because he was all alone and he was going to be captured. You know. So.
He had cut himself off from God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's why listen when you can. Don't wait till things get to such an extreme extent. Learn these truths now, before it is too late.
Saul had so many second chances.
He did. That was the point. Yes, he kept, as Linda was making, kept getting all these chances, and he was repeated, and maybe that brings us to son of Belial.
Yeah, so what does that mean?
I read that it means just worthlessness, lawlessness, and I think it comes from disobeying the first commandment, putting your trust and everything in something apart from God.
Some of the words I heard put with it were willful and obstinate, and I found that brought it home a little bit too, watching and thinking.
So feel free to also answer the next question about Nabal, because these two questions are almost the same, in a way.
I read in one place that Belial meant wicked one. So Nabal would be the son of the wicked one.
Yeah, Belial was just another name for the devil.
Yeah, it's another name for Satan. And this is an extremely important question. It's one I don't know whether we've gone into much. But yes, it is another word for Satan. And I read, it's a long process of sin and iniquity that produces a seared conscience. And that becomes a conscience that has absolutely no love for anything or anybody except oneself. Nobody else matters. And he has no fear of God, which describes Nabal.
And Mrs. Eddy, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think Mrs. Eddy has a few citations about Belial in Science and Health, and it draws a contrast between the Christ and Satan. In page 171, she says, no more sympathy exists between the flesh and spirit than between Belial and Christ. Another one, she talks in 539, Paul says, what communion has light with darkness, and what concord has Christ with Belial? Also, it's a direct contrast, it's like spirit and flesh, like we are learning that there's no existence, no coexistence at all between the two. So it's either evil or the right way, Christ's way. And Nabal, of course, being described as churlish, that has rude, fairly selfish, narrow-minded, hard, firm, obstinate, just sharp contrast to what the qualities of Christ would be.
Thank you.
That's very helpful, because there's no, between Christ and Belial, they're exact opposites, and that's one of the things that we've learned in Christian Science, is there's no way to mitigate error or make it look not so bad, and there's also no halfway point between, being with God or not being with Him. Either you are or you aren't. So, can't be mitigated.
I read the sons are worthless. Nothing good about it. Worthless. When Mrs. Evans was here, she would at times say to someone that they had a demon in them. And being a nice little Christian Scientist, I remember the first time I heard that, I was absolutely appalled. But because there's no such thing as evil, and we don't believe in the devil. But she was saying, and it was the descriptions that have been given, and especially if you the description that Linda read about Saul, where he repeatedly refused to do right, so that it became so ingrained, and it is as if someone is possessed by a demon or a devil. It gets so ingrained, so deep-rooted in them, that they just are animated by this. Now, we had a whole Love as a Liberator, cast out demons. It is something that we must do, and we as practitioners or as Christian Scientists, and you can't be afraid to do it. And usually when it's addressed, it will do what?
Turn on you, flee.
Yes, it will turn on you. It will say, leave me alone, what have I to do with thee?
It will try to ridicule you. It will accuse you of things that it is guilty of.
Yes, that's exactly what it'll do. And it takes courage to face those demons and root them out. And if you have someone that loves you enough to do it, you better be very grateful for it, and not as the example of Samuel and Saul, where he just wouldn't. You know, Jesus did not heal everyone. This isn't the fault of Christian Scientists or a practitioner. If someone refuses obedience repeatedly, then you have to shake the dust off your feet and go on your way. But this is a very important topic, and most Christian Scientists don't like to talk about it because it's not pleasant. And if you see it, if you see these tendencies in your children, you've got to get after it. It's better to get after it. We were taught here, if you have an unruly child as an infant or a small child, that's when you get to it, not wait till they're grown and seem so out of control. But see it as that. It is not them, but it is animal magnetism trying to possess them. And we have people now dabbling in Satanism and all of this stuff in our country. And we need to be aware of it, because if you're aware of it, you're handling it and you cannot be affected by it. It's only when you're stupid to it or afraid of it. It's got to be addressed. And it can be cast out with the authority of what?
Christ.
Belial, the son of Belial, would be the son of Satan. Not a pretty picture, but all things are possible to God, and it can be taken care of and cast out. But don't get to the point, or don't be. If you see any of these qualities in you where you're selfish and all of the lists that we've done, don't care about anybody but yourself, and you don't fear God, you'll just do whatever you want to, it doesn't matter what principle is directing you to do, then you get help, and you make sure you get rid of that tendency of mortal mind at its worst.
I think that the love we talked about is the contrast also, of course, to all these qualities. Talking about unselfish, good temper. The opposite is what's listed with this being churlish and evil. So.
Yeah, because all of this is just qualities of the Adam dream. It's the mess that people put themselves in belief when they turn from God, when they refuse to acknowledge what their spiritual sense is telling them. The only answer is to acknowledge that there is a God and strive to find a closeness with God, which is exactly what Christian Science does. There
That's
isn't.
right.
Yeah, because people turn to a lot of different things to try to get them out of the mess that they put themselves into. When they find themselves the son of Belial. A lot of people turn to drugs today to try to ameliorate the symptoms of this having turned away from God.
You know, what I'm concerned about today is our children. You think about it. Schools being attacked, this drug epidemic, children dying of flu, and it's the sins of the fathers. So you listen to what Florence said. Do you have the Bible in your home? Is it prominent in your home? Do your children see you read it? Do they understand you have a great regard for it? Do they see you praying? Do they see you loving your father, mother, God? Because if they don't, you have left them without anything. And no wonder they are having this. You know, I couldn't help but think in the story of Moses when he went to Pharaoh, all of these things, the plagues, the locusts, what finally got Pharaoh's attention?
His child, his firstborn son.
Yes. Yes. Maybe you don't care if you're a mess, but when you see your children a mess, then, That's what's happening in our country. We're mourning our dead children. I hate to be so, but you've got to understand this, because if we don't do this work, who will do this work? Who will save these children? Most of them are innocent. They just have not been told about their father, mother, God. Everyone tiptoes around. Oh, we don't go to church. We don't read the Bible. No, we just have to be loving and kind, and you can play tennis all day or do whatever you want. Well, to that I say, bourgeois. That's what Mrs. Evans loved to say. Anyway, please, these are signs, and they are not good signs, that we are not on the right path when our children suffer this way. Now, if you were in the 91st Psalm, if you were working, the offspring of the righteous are blessed. But make sure you are, and make sure we are working for our children. They are the rising generation, and we are taught in the Bible what to do with our children.
Teach them the way to go.
Yes.
It's more important than anything that they are getting in school. And unfortunately, what's going on in a lot of schools is more destructive than helpful in that regard. We have a serious problem in this country. This country was based on Christian principles. That is why it prospered. That is why it gave birth to Christian Science. And now we are letting it all turn to garbage. And it's up to us, who know better, to do something about it.
And people who think they can run from it, you know, they're going to escape to their rich communities, their gated communities. I'm sorry. They're probably even worse with drugs and other problems. You do not
Sorry, go ahead.
You do not run from it. You face it, and it has to be healed, and it can be through science.
The sons of Belial don't live in the ghetto. They live in the rich gated communities, folks.
Or you can say they can be contained in anywhere, because the drug started in the ghetto, but look at it now, all over, everywhere. So.
Does anybody want to describe where Nabal lived? What was his little community like?
Lived in prosperity.
Yeah.
Very rich. very rich and very selfish.
And he inherited it. He didn't earn it.
It was interesting. I think I read it. He was the only one ever mentioned that he was the son. What was it called, Tom?
He was a descendant of Lot. Right?
Caleb.
Caleb.
Caleb, that's right.
Caleb was
Right.
a very, very good man, but I read too that name Caleb means doggish, which is odd. But
Yeah, I didn't.
anyway, he acted like a rabid dog. Nabal did, not Caleb. Nabal.
But he inherited a lot too from Caleb, right? I remember.
Yep.
Caleb gave him a lot, so he didn't really work for a lot of what he had. So I guess.
A
Yeah.
good illustration of not spoiling your children by giving them everything, where they don't even know what it is to have a good day's work and to be grateful. It's given them.
The drug industry is at fault, and they're making huge amounts of money and charging a lot of money for drugs. So people go and get heroin on the street because it's cheap.
Well, when we blame it for anything other than our own misgivings, our own lack of God in our own life, then we become helpless. We blame it on anything, drugs, outside, drugs, guns, all of this. Then we are victims because we can't do anything about it. It's only when we claim ownership and say we can do something about it, and that is by turning to our Heavenly Father, Mother, God. We can blame everything. There's all kinds of things, and that's what they're talking about now. Yeah, blah, 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 all the things that created this. But until we take responsibility, until we take ownership and know it's our lack of God that's the problem, then we are helpless victims.
No.
Yeah, because the human mind would say, oh, we have to punish the drug companies. Well, that's the stupidest idea that ever came forth, and it does come forth out of a lot of politicians. But that doesn't do a darn thing.
Well, I think the falling away is first, obviously, because if it wasn't first, then there wouldn't be the greed that make them do what they do also. So no matter what, the basic problem is the falling away.
Exactly. And the only solution is to go in the right direction instead of falling away. And our example, go back to what Florence said, our example is the most valuable thing we can do for mankind. Our watches and our lives. We can't control anybody else. You can't legislate morality. But you can be a good example. And you can bring the power of God to bear upon your life.
And in so doing, on everyone's life. And it is our unselfishness in this work. As you unselfishly do these watches and spend time praying and working for the good of all mankind, we will bring in the millennium. And this Adam dream will cease. Mrs. Eddy says that. And all of this is the Adam dream. And we must never forget that. It's a dream. It's a mesmerism. It's not the truth. But I see how different. When we brought up our children, I never even took them to a doctor. They had no drugs. You use that, what is it, your slip that says you don't have to. Exemption. Thank you. No drugs, no doctors, never needed to. And now the change for our children and all the drugs, yes, but and everything else, going to doctors, but you have to just keep pounding and doing the best you can. And if you have a Christly home in which you're raising your children, there will be less and less need for any of that. But you have to be, what is the best defense?
Good offense.
Yes. So let's, go to it. Have this good offense in your home and in your life. And you'll be prepared for all of this and do much for the future generations whom we love.
The thing I was thinking about Caleb was that Caleb took the land that had the giants in it, and he took care of those giants, and then it made it so that Nabal didn't have anything to overcome, apparently, or at least Nabal thought so. That's all I was thinking.
Yeah, here David had done something so kind to him and wonderful, and what was his thanks?
Never heard of you.
Yeah, who is he? I'm not
Who are
helping
you?
him.
Lack of gratitude.
Lack of gratitude.
There's a lot more than just a simple no. He consulted him, too, so.
Yes, he did. He insulted them. Do mine anointed no harm, the Bible says, and David was God's anointed. He did harm to David, and he's very dangerous. People are worried about malpractice. This has nothing to do with malpractice. You do deliberately someone harm who is working in the truth. Be careful. That's just the law of God. Do mine anointed no harm. And look what happened to Nabal. We all know. Okay, we should probably go on now.
So what about David? What kind of person was he?
Well, he was selfless. He was had great respect for God, great faith in God, and he was a very, very strong proponent of what was right. And that guided him in everything he did.
I read that he was after God's heart and made God smile.
Yes.
And the few times that he did do something wrong, when it was pointed out, he turned right around.
Thank you. That's a huge quality.
He had humility.
I think it also proved that his greatest desire was to do right, so he fell and did some really wrong things, but at least I think his basic desire was to live, as he says, a man after God's own heart.
Mm-hmm.
Well, at this time, how was David living?
Well, he was he was a vagabond. He was an outcast in his own country at this point because he was being attacked by Saul.
But he was always loyal to God, because when Saul was chasing him and he and his men came upon Saul and his men asleep, he refused to kill Saul, but he got away to a certain point and let him know that he was there and he could have taken his life, but David said that Saul, God had appointed him and he was loyal to God and he wouldn't do anything else.
Yes.
Right.
And he described himself as God's servant, which I think is very important.
Right. Correct.
He also was quick to act. He did not deliberate or think or scratch his head, should I do this or shouldn't I do this? When he got what he felt was a message from God, he moved. Now, sometimes, like in this case, it wasn't a message for God. He was angry. Fortunately, we had Abigail intervening, but that's a good sign, too, where you're not just having to always deliberate or wonder, well, is this right or is this wrong? He felt moved by God. He ran to meet Goliath. There are many instances of him acting immediately. When God told him to recover his family and goods when they were stolen, he acted immediately. And in this case, he was ready to act immediately. in the wrong way. But as Jeremy said, he had the humility to change on a dime. He didn't argue. He didn't say, I'm always right, and you just shut up, you little twit. No. He listened, respected, and heard her as the voice of God, which she was at that time, and I'm speaking of Abigail.
And he expressed gratitude to her, too.
He did.
He seemed decisive when the men came to David and told him how they had been treated by Nabal. He said to his men, gird ye on every man his sword.
Yep.
And they were going to go off and kill every single person there. Man, woman, child, and animal. They were going to kill them all.
Yes, he didn't debate
No
that.
hesitation.
No.
It says something about David, the fact that he even sent his servants with the message and at least gave him a chance instead of just rushing in at first even.
Yeah. And he stayed in the country.
Go ahead.
Well, he escaped to the Philistines. He lived there for over a year, get away from Saul.
And
right,
he also,
and at that time he had 600 basically warriors and that he led, and they went around attacking towns and killing people and stuff like that. They were a pretty tough group of people.
yeah, they no doubt could have taken care of Nabal.
Without a doubt.
Yep. He also did not promote himself. He was supposed to be the king of Israel, and by getting rid of Saul, he would have been, but he waited for God's disposal of events. He did not kill Saul. He respected Saul as Saul was anointed at that time, and he let it play out rather than taking matters into his own hands. He let it play
So
out.
if we think, oh, sorry.
Well, when God was ready to promote David, David was promoted.
So if we think about how decisive and tough David and his men were, now they're going after Nabal and his community there. And what happened? I find this remarkable. How did someone stop David? We talked about Abigail and what kind of person she was.
She was like the exact opposite of Nabal.
She was like David.
Yes.
She was respectful of what was right. She wasn't afraid of anybody. She took action. She obviously had a good relationship with God. She had a strong spiritual sense. I mean, if Nabal had had any spiritual sense whatsoever in him, he would have recognized who and what David was, and he would have welcomed him. He would have helped him. It would have been a win-win situation. But it took Abigail to make things right.
And David lamented over Saul, and he loved his son Jonathan. And so he tried to do a kindness to the son after Jonathan and David were gone. And Saul were gone.
Right, that comes later, and that's true. David told no animosity. He wanted to help Jonathan's son, and he did. That's a beautiful story. Barely put that in a lesson. But as far as Abigail, she had a poise about her because she was connected to God, and she could think quickly and clearly. And someone said, maybe Tom or someone can read what she said to David, because someone said it's quite a masterpiece, how she spoke to him. Okay, Jeremy has it.
Upon me, my Lord, upon me let this iniquity be, and let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak in thine audience, and hear the words of thine handmaid. Let not, my Lord, I pray thee, regard this man of Belial, even Nabal, For as his name is, so is he. Nabal is his name, and folly is with him. But I, thine handmaid, saw not the young men of my Lord, whom thou didst send. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord liveth, as thy soul liveth, seeing the Lord hath withholden thee from coming to shed blood, and from avenging thyself with thine own hand, now let thine enemies, and they that seek evil to my Lord, be as Nabal. And now this blessing which thine handmaid hath brought unto my Lord, let it even be given unto the young men that follow my Lord. I pray thee, forgive the trespass of thine handmaid, for the Lord will certainly make my Lord a sure house, because my Lord fighteth the battles of the Lord, and evil hath not been found in thee all thy days. Yet a man is risen to pursue thee, and to seek thine soul, but the soul of my Lord shall be bound in the bundle of life with the Lord thy God, and the souls of thine enemies, them shall he sling out, as out of the middle of a sling. And it shall come to pass, when the Lord shall have done to my Lord according to all the good that he hath spoken concerning thee, and shall have appointed thee ruler over Israel, that this shall be no grief unto thee, nor offense of heart unto my Lord, either that thou hast shed blood causeless, or that my Lord hath avenged himself. But when the Lord shall have dwelt well with my Lord, then remember thine handmaid.
So she appealed to David's higher nature, and even thought about how would he feel when he is king and he realized, he killed these people out of anger and reaction. And because she was wise, she was a virtuous woman, as the title this week's lesson speaks about. She won his ear, calmed him down from making a terrible mistake. This is a very important art when you think of it, to prevent someone from making a terrible mistake, to have the wisdom and the words to do that. And we should all pray for that, because you never know how you can stop evil from going on when you're ready with the right word. To stop a person from committing a sin that will not only hurt himself and the other person, but it ripples all around. It has far-reaching effects. That's what selfish people never think about. They just think about themselves. They don't realize all the misery they're causing other people. So have that word spoken with wisdom.
And Abigail demonstrated tremendous unselfishness and tremendous wisdom.
And she acted quickly. She did not debate this. She did not ask anybody's opinion. She just did it. Because if she'd waited, it would have been over.
Too
late. And her servants all loved her because they obeyed her immediately. It's quite a wonderful story, and it was one I'd never, ever read until a couple of years ago. We had it in the lesson. Again, my ignorance of the Bible. What a story.
And she was so humble because she got off the ass and fell at David's feet. She bowed to the ground.
Well, she knew who David was, and she knew what his mission in life was. And she respected that. She saw the bigger picture. She felt it in her heart, and she moved, and God gave her the words to speak.
I read that she was the good angel in Naples' household. She had early training in a godly home.
She understood the events of her own world. She cooperated with God, had confidence in God, was meek and a quiet spirit. And you talk about.
And you think of how difficult it must have been to live with that Abel. Be married to him. Yuck.
And yet at the time it was, in a way, a time for her to prepare for what she had to do later.
And because of goodness, what happened to her?
God lifted her out of that situation.
Married David.
Yeah, and she became David's wife.
What a reward for doing right.
It's kind of what we've been talking about. Proverbs 22 says, train up the child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So Abigail grew up in a home where she read the scriptures, and that never left her. That was her rock. And often children who see their parents reading the Bible, they may dismiss it when they're in their late teens or early 20s, thinking they don't need it. But then when they go through a few challenges in life, they'll remember the example of their parents and go back to what their parents did, because the parents are always an example to the children. And we may not see it right away, but that's why it's so important to give the children education in the Bible and knowing Christ. It's the most important thing.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Yeah. And for children who don't grow up in that kind of a home, it's even more difficult for them, and they have to find an example other than their parents to follow. And that's why we have a church. That's why we do what we do.
And it's by the grace of God that they do.
Yep.
I was talking to someone yesterday who deals a lot with children and troubled children, orphans actually. And he has said that as long as they have one person in their life,
one adult
that can
care for them.
Yeah, and that they can turn to, they'll be okay. And so that's why, and many, people without children, you can be that person for a child or a young adult. You can be that example. If you love, you don't have to be their mother. In fact, their mother or father might not be an example. You can be that example. Parsons, I don't think he has children. I don't know how many children he's helped. Because he loves. He just loves. And he's also deeply happy, I would say, right sense, because love alone is life. And that's what he does. He feels his mission in life is to help children, sometimes troubled children, who have had no example. So it's just an excuse to say you don't have children and you not interested in children. There are many children in this world that need love.
Many adults who need love.
Yes.
Right around 100%.
Well, it's a great testament when you look at the good examples. You look at the the stories of people who've broken out of bad situations. God has never left any one of us. What a great love our God has for us.
And any miserable experience you seem to have had is many of you have learned and are learning, was the Adam dream. It was never the truth. God was always with you, loving you, caring for you. Could never be outside his care. And as you know that, you cement with that, and the past just falls away like a bad dream, because that's all it ever was. That's the power of our God.
And if our bad experiences have pushed us closer to God, then they have served their purpose.
There are many people who have had bad experiences, bad childhoods, who have become more worth to God than those who have been, had a happy life, so-called. Often it's that way. Mrs. Eddy said her greatest workers were the ones that, pulled him out of the grave. So we must never despair about our background, whatever that is. God can use us if we let him. Today is what matters. The past is over.
I was thinking about how right before Abigail left, when she was told what happened, the servant said to her, "For he is such a son of Belial that a man cannot speak to him." How refreshing it must have been when she came across David and he would listen.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that receptive thought.
I don't know, Tom, if you want to get into Proverbs, the virtuous woman today. Otherwise, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Linda wrote something beautiful on the forum about the virtuous woman, which is what kind of person Abigail was.
Yeah, she was obviously the voice of sanity in that household, which is why the servants went to her.
And it only takes one person in a household, one who can change everything, one right thinker, as she did. A beautiful story.
It's very inspiring.
So much good in it, so much overcome.
Did anybody think that they could get so much out of this story about Nabal, David, and Abigail?
I'm always amazed at what comes out in these Bible studies.
Certainly is a lot there. And I got to say about these Bible studies, I know when we first studied them, I walk away from each one afterwards wondering, where have I been all my life? I've never learned to study this.
Yeah.
Why wasn't I exposed to this much earlier? But not to regret the past, but thank God we're doing it now and moving forward with it.
Well, I tell people all the time that the Bible has all the answers. Nothing's really changed in terms of human nature and how people react to each other. Like, you can apply the Bible to anything happening in today's news. It's all there. All the answers are in the Bible.
There is. That's good.
Constantly reminding people of the value of the Bible and how amazing it is, because society tends to just brush it away as a useless, book of fairy tales. They just don't understand. And so we have to keep reinforcing the importance of the Bible to each one of us. And I just can't believe it took me this long to get going, but thanks to this church and going to these Bible studies, I love it.
That's so great. I do too.
Well, and with that, we have a responsibility, don't we? God has given us a tremendous blessing
Yes.
by bringing us together this way.
Yes, he sure has.
And when you think about it, there's a reason why we get so much out of these Bible studies. It's not just any old Bible study class. what does Jesus say? When two or three are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of them.
And you might not hear that many voices, but there are usually anywhere from 60, 70 people that are here live listening now. So
well, that's an interesting thought. So, I think it's great that people call in and listen, but they're always welcome to say something or ask a question.
Thank you.
Yes.
Could I say something? This is Betty.
Of course.
Okay, thank you. I just want to thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Gary. And thank you, everybody, because speaking for those of us, or everybody who didn't have this upbringing that Abigail had and knew what was the right thing to do, and now can come to this Bible study and hear and receive and the instruction and how important it is to do for the children today. I do have one little girl from the Save the Children whom I help and write to, and in every letter, thank you also to these Bible studies, I always tell her that God loves her and that God is with her and Jesus is her friend and she can talk to him and he loves her more than anybody can. And I don't know what her background is, but this is the truth. And to hear it from somebody outside the family, whatever that may be, I would feel that were important. And I had wished that I had had that when I was her age, but I have it now. So I'm very grateful for these Bible studies, and especially now, this one. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's a lovely illustration of how to help another little child, just in that simple way.
You never know.
Never know the huge effect you will have on them. Just a beautiful illustration. Thank you.
Well, and thank you, Tom, and thank you, everybody.
Yes, thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.